I'm about to give you an honest, unfiltered review of our stay so far at Disney's Riviera Resort. From the room to the pool to the food, I'm breaking down the pros and cons, my personal thoughts on room requests, plus I'll let you know if this resort really lives up to the hype and if it's worth the price, or if there are reasons I'd skip this resort completely. So stick around because we're diving deep into what makes this resort unique and what you might want to consider before booking your stay here. Hello, and welcome to the Laid Back Magic Way podcast. I'm your host, Dana Stanley, creator of Laid Back Magic. As a mom of 3, I know how tough it can be to find time to plan a Disney World trip that doesn't leave you feeling stressed or overwhelmed. That's why I'm here, to help moms like you create Disney vacations that feel even better than they look on paper. Here, we're not chasing perfection, but creating our next favorite memories. So whether you're brand new to Disney or looking to go deeper into the details, this podcast is your go-to for simple tips, mindset shifts, real-life trip recaps, and expert insights to make your trip magical and manageable. New episodes drop every Monday, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment. Okay, let's dive in. You're about to listen to a different kind of episode because I recorded this while on our Disney World trip this past week. But when I got back, I realized I talked quite a bit. So this week's episode is going to be a part 1 of 2. So make sure you come back next week for part 2, where I really touch on my experience with Disney Skyliner. Whether you're staying at the Riviera or not, I feel like it could be very helpful if you have plans or are booked at any of Disney World Skyliner resorts. Right now, I'm sitting in our 1-bedroom preferred view room at the Riviera, and I truly have the most perfect view. Crew is napping, and Colton has the girls at the pool, so I can actually see them if I look a little bit to my left and down. We're on the 6th floor, so not the highest floor. I think the highest floor is 9th or 10th, and we're not the lowest floor. We're like kind of right in the middle of the middle. I'm overlooking the beautiful lake, and then I have the Skyliner a little bit to my right, and I can just see really the whole line from Riviera going to Caribbean Beach. Across the lake, I can see the Caribbean Beach pool, and when I look down, I can see both of the Riviera pools and the splash pad. I see kids playing and playing bocce ball. I really have a view of like the entire courtyard and the Skyliner too. And while I'm a stickler for audio, I apologize in advance if the audio sounds a little different for this episode, since I'm recording with a much smaller, different microphone than my usual podcast mic at home. But I wanted to give you like my very initial fresh thoughts while I was here. If you're not familiar with Disney's Riviera, it's a deluxe resort that also hosts DVC, or Disney Vacation Club, which is Disney's timeshare program. I didn't book through DVC this time. I usually do and rent points, but I actually booked through Disney because the discount they had for annual pass holders this summer was really good and couldn't pass it up. And also because this was such a last minute trip, like we booked it like a month out, this was like one of the only rooms that was available, honestly, of a resort that was new. Like I wanted a resort that I hadn't stayed at before, and there was tons of 1-bedroom preferred views. So here we are. In terms of location, technically this is in the quote Epcot area because you can take a Skyliner ride straight to Epcot in like about 9-10 minutes. But there's no walkability to any of the parks. So yes, it's in the same area as Boardwalk, Beach, or Yacht Club, but it's farther outside of Crescent Lake. So you can only walk to Caribbean Beach. That's it. There's no boats, nothing else to the parks. So you can take a Skyliner ride straight to Epcot, or to get to Hollywood Studios, you can take a 5-minute Skyliner ride to Caribbean Beach, the one that I'm looking at, get off, and then have another like 5-6 minute ride to Hollywood Studios, assuming that the Skyliner is running and not stopping a lot, which I will get to in a little bit. And then to get to the other resorts, Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom, you would go to the bus. There's free buses. You don't share a bus. There are not multiple bus stops, which is wonderful. So Skyliner for Hollywood and Epcot, and then the bus for Magic and Animal Kingdom. Let's start with the absolute first impressions, like when we pulled up to the building. So it feels less charming to me from the outside than somewhere just lower, like not as tall. Literally, that's the biggest characteristic to me that stands out, because there are a lot of deluxe resorts that are not very tall, like Boardwalk, Old Key West, and then there are some that are very tall, like the Contemporary, the Dolphin, and the Riviera feels very tall to me, and I feel like the higher a hotel is, the more like commercial it feels, if that makes sense. That being said, when you pull up, everything feels very like sparkly and nice and splendid, like with the cobblestones when you're walking up and then you see the medallion on the floor. Then when you walk in, the lobby doesn't have a huge ceiling, but I actually like that. I'm not a fan of those like big impressive lobbies with just the really tall ceilings and like a big chandelier. I'm not a huge fan of those. They get like echoey. And again, it makes it feel just more commercial hotel. And that doesn't feel like this. Everything feels very nice and new. Like it's just a new resort and it feels like it. I feel like a lot of the deluxe resorts, as nice as they are, they're just getting old. And this feels new. Like it has that like fresh paint feeling, even though it's not like brand spanking new, but you get what I mean. And we got to the Riviera so early because we took like a 6:45 a.m. flight. So I think when we got here, it was a little before 10 a.m., which is crazy. Like the flight itself was actually even shorter. I don't know. Maybe they went fast. I'm not asking any questions. I'm not complaining, but we got to Florida very quickly. We don't check bags, so we didn't have to wait for that. We used Away We Go. They were there waiting for us, so we just got to the hotel really quickly. And one of the good and bad things about an early flight is that check-in starts at 4. So you are really waiting around. Like it's a while when you get there early, which I'm not going to lie is extremely hard when you have a toddler who now hasn't napped and was up at 4 in the morning. And this ended up backfiring a little bit, like later in the night, which I will get to. But one of the good things is that when you get there so early, it was almost like a resort day for us. Like we didn't go into the parks, which I'm glad we didn't, and really just explored the Riviera. We hadn't been there before, so I wanted to visit everything. And we did. We got coffee, we shopped, we went to the pool, we ate, we drank, we did crafts, all the things. And this all felt really easy because hands down, what I love most about this resort is how compact it is. It seems really big because it's so tall, but the actual footprint is really small. So from end to end of the resort is 570 feet. And I did some like Google Maps distance research to do this. Like if you walked from one end and went diagonal all the way to the other end, is still just not a lot of space. Whereas Boardwalk, which I'm really familiar with, is more like 900 feet, almost 1,000 feet if you needed to get from one place to another, depending on where your room is and where you're headed. Then you have somewhere like the Polynesian is huge, like 1,600 feet. So to put that in perspective, Riviera is one of those places you don't have to worry too much about where your room is or where you're headed because everything is really easy to get to. A lot of resorts, I put in very specific requests because depending on what building you get or how far you are from the elevator, like I hate being far from an elevator. Like that's one of my pet peeves. I feel like I always forget like my sunglasses or something and I'm like running all the way back to the room and then all the way back to the elevator. Not so much lately, but in the past, that used to be a big thing was I needed to be close to an elevator. And when I was researching for my room request at Riviera, and after chatting with my travel agent friend, Melissa, who was actually there the same time as us, she requested the West Wing, but ended up getting the East Wing, which is over on the Topolino side. But she did also get a higher floor, which is what she wanted, and she had a beautiful view. Whereas I requested a higher floor and also said to just prioritize our room being early over that. But our room still wasn't ready at like 3:45. I was hoping by like 2. I was really secretly hoping we'd be in by 2. I should have known better. I haven't had a room ready before check-in in years, especially a one bedroom, like forget it. But around that time, we were starting to like lose our minds with crew, our 21-month-old. I went over and talked to the host there and was like, hey, I know I already like talked to you guys and checked in and let you know that we're here. And I know that check-in's not till 4, but just wanted to see like the status of our room. Have we been assigned a room? And if so, I want to let you know that any requests I put in, I do not care. Like, I just want a room. I don't care where it is. I think he probably shouldn't have been showing me what he was showing me on his tablet. But essentially, they can see all of these rooms with different statuses, like housekeeper in room or housekeeping complete, waiting for final check-in approval. And this is why I always do both an online check-in and also when we get there, just talk to somebody. Like, hey, we had an early flight. Just want to know that we're here. Because he was able to get me into a different room that I was not assigned to. So this was like a while. This was like a lot of back and forth. And I had kind of just told him to forget it. Like, I was like, it's fine. Like, I'm going to go for a walk with the baby and that kind of thing. Because he was like, oh, we can do this room, but it's like not on a higher floor. And I'd say it was fine. And then when he would click on it, he would say like, oh, it's not letting me assign you to that. Just a lot of like back and forth. And I was getting very confused as to what room numbers he was saying, what floors he was saying, east wing, west wing. I was like, okay, just let me know when my room's ready. And about 5 minutes after I walked away, he came back and found me and said, I got you in a room. It's 8546, which by the way, that's our room number, 8546. It's perfect. I love where we are. So there's really pros and cons to being anywhere because besides having, let's say, like a ground floor or like a second floor room, if you get a room that's at least one of the higher floors, I don't really see a downside because you're going to have a good view. I know there are standard view rooms that aren't preferred that are actually facing the other side of where you see Epcot and Epcot fireworks. So I just feel like there's pros and cons to being anywhere. If you're in the West Wing, you're closer to the Skyliner, technically. If you're on the East Wing, you're closer to all the food spots and the main pool. But again, with this resort in particular, I wouldn't stress too much about where you get put. I do think I would request a higher floor if I had to choose, but I think that would be my only request. And honestly, if that sounds like meh to you, I don't even necessarily think you need to do that. I would just leave it blank. When I was checking in online, I believe I had 5 options for room requests, and that was higher floor, lower floor, west wing, east wing, and closer to the elevator. And I think, if I remember correctly, I could ask Melissa, I think you could pick 2. And then there's a little box that you can check that just says like, hey, don't prioritize these things over my room getting ready, which I had checked. But again, our room wasn't ready until 4 anyway. So we ended up in the west wing on the 5th floor, but in the most center of like the arm of the west wing. So it's very easy getting to the lobby, which is also where you'd go for buses and Ubers to grab coffee. But even quote all the way to the east wing where all the food is very quick. I had been picturing that we were kind of at the part of the west wing that was like jutting out when I was picturing the map. But then once we got to the room and I saw the view, I realized that we're closer to the middle, which I really like. And we were kind of imagining that the 2 wings weren't connected, like almost like 2 towers. But the good news is that's not the case. We went to Topolino's for dinner the night that we got there. And I was shocked how fast I got back to our room from the quote east wing. It was very quick. Like nothing is far is what I'm getting at. And that's definitely the first and number one thing that I love about the resort itself is everything feels so laid back and easy and calm because like no one's rushing from place to place. You're not rushing from place to place. In the morning, Colton's been going down and getting 2 lattes with an extra shot and he's back in 2 minutes. Like it's just so nice and easy to get food and go to the pool, especially because we have kids of like different ages. It's just nice when you're popping in and out and changing clothes and grabbing swimsuits and things that everything is so close together. I've been sharing our trip on my Instagram stories and the amount of DMs that I have gotten about wanting me very specifically to compare Boardwalk versus Riviera is like astounding. And the more I thought about it, I guess it makes sense because they're kind of in the same area. They're both deluxe. And a lot of people have stayed at one or the other, or a lot of people have Boardwalk booked right now and they're like considering switching to Riviera. And there are so many factors that I would ask someone before giving an answer, like, have you stayed at either of them before? Are you scared of heights? How much resort time are you going to have? What's the availability like? Like, what kind of room would you get? Will you be in a studio or a one bedroom? How much does it cost? What's the cost comparison? How many people are you bringing with you? Without having all of that information, if you haven't stayed at either resort, my pick will still always be Boardwalk. But something you have to know about me and Colton, too, is we will always choose where the resort is over everything else. Like, the location comes first over the room, over the pool, over the food. Now, what I don't love about Riviera is very simple, and that's just that I can't walk to a park. And Boardwalk, while it does have some cons, probably the main one being just food options, being able to use my own 2 feet is always going to be more reliable to get to Epcot and Hollywood Studios than the Skyliner, and that's just a fact. And to me, that's just priceless, in my opinion. But that might not be for you. You may think that the Skyliner is the best thing ever, and your kids love it, and it's like a ride in itself, and you have picky eaters, or you're going during like hurricane season, and you don't want to be going outside for food like you have to at Boardwalk, and maybe you only have 2 park days, and you'll mostly be at the resort, then I would very much consider Riviera for you. I'm not saying it would be like my number 1 pick, but it would be in the running and worth a conversation for sure. And I mean, every time we're like in this room or walk into this room, I say to Colton, I love this room. Like, I love the bathroom. I love the kitchen. It's really big. Like, it just feels huge to me. Like, I feel very happy here. Colton says I'm in the honeymoon phase, but I don't think that's true. Like, it is really a beautiful, comfortable, upscale feeling resort. And I was saying to him, like, no, this is so much bigger than the Boardwalk 1 bedroom. So I was looking up comparisons because we were like wondering, like, okay, how much bigger? The Boardwalk's 1 bedroom is actually one of the smallest 1 bedrooms you can get on property. So Riviera is a full 100 square feet bigger than Boardwalk's. And honestly, you feel it when you're in here. Because the toilet is in a separate space, so you have your shower, toilet, and a sink. Then you have a door to a really like a separate room, if you want to call it a space, but it's big. You have a door that goes into a soaking tub and another sink, and then another door. And we literally put Crew's crib in there, and he has truly his own room right now. It has 2 doors that you can close. So it's set up perfectly. I can get to him from my side of the room. There's like these double sliding barn doors that open and close. And then I can go the other way from like the toilet side of the bathroom. It's perfect. So really, the girls are sleeping in the Murphy bed in the main living space. We have the main bedroom, which is a king. He's in his little room in the bathroom. So it feels like a 3-bedroom to me right now. Like, it feels like we're in this grand villa and it's only a 1 bedroom. So I'm going to keep talking up Riviera just a little bit more because I wish Boardwalk had some of these qualities with 2 things very specifically. And one is the splash pad. Here, there's a main pool, a quiet pool, and then a splash pad. And they're all separate from each other. And the splash pad is great. Like, Crew could just stay there all day. I will make a note that kids over 48 inches aren't supposed to go on any splash pads, and they will check here. Like, they are measuring kids, and they're all gated. So, like, if you want to be at the splash pad, but you have another kid that's over 48 inches, they'll have to, like, open the gate and go to the main pool that has a slide. Which, yes, I went down. Yes, it's very fun. My girls have gone down like 500 times so far. The main pool here is on the small side. I would say Boardwalk's is maybe just a tiny bit bigger, but it doesn't bother me. I think it's really easy to keep track of your kids. And the Riviera has a 0 entry spot. So like if you could get a chair by that 0 entry with a toddler is so nice. And the second thing is just the food. It's so nice being able to stay under one roof to get whatever food you need, from your coffee and like Mickey waffles, chicken fingers, and then really good food too. Like the burger from Bar Riva was exponentially better than any poolside food I've ever had at Boardwalk by a landslide. And I think it's because it's a new resort, like you live and you learn. So they knew what they needed to give a better experience to the guests, and they have a full kitchen, I'm assuming, versus the pool bar at Boardwalk is just smaller and probably not equipped to have certain foods. Whereas Riviera, like they really thought out the food situation here, and it has 100% paid off. Everyone overwhelmingly talks about the food here, from the lemon ricotta pancakes to the salads. And yeah, it's just good and it's convenient. And you don't have to walk outside to get it. If it's raining, there's a way to get to it from the inside. And on the topic of food, we went to Topolino's the day that we got here for dinner. And while it was a terrible idea on our part because crew hadn't napped, like I said, he absolutely lost his mind. So like anyone that was at Topolino's for dinner on July 10th, I am so sorry. I really tried my best. He ended up sleeping on me for like 10 glorious minutes, but I ended up just ditching on dinner early to get him back to the room. Poor thing was so shot. We have been to Topolino's for the character breakfast, which is, in my opinion, like the best character breakfast in terms of like the overall experience and food. And I can confirm dinner was insanely good. I really wish I was able to like fully enjoy it and not like scarf down a couple bites. But from what I had experienced and eaten, it was up to par with like Citricos over at Grand Floridian, California Grill, like all on the same levels. And it's insanely easy to get a reservation because most people just think of it for breakfast because there's no characters at dinner. A plus two is if you eat there, let's say you ate there at 5:30 like we did, you can go back and show your receipt and they'll let you go out to the private viewing area to watch the Epcot fireworks, which is, of course, like we were 100% not able to do that, but that's good to know for next time. That's all for part 1 of this episode. Make sure to come back next week for part 2, where I really touch on my experience with Disney's Skyliner, and I will see you then. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Laid Back Magic Way podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode and it was helpful for you, it would mean the world to me if you'd write a quick review. Your reviews help more moms like you find the show, and I read every single one of them. Seriously, thank you in advance. You can find me on Instagram at Somewhere Worthwhile, and I'd love to hear from you there. DM me if you have any questions about this episode or what you'd like to see in future ones. Until then, keep planning for your next favorite memory, and I'll see you next time.